My beloved Madridistas, welcome back to the channel. Welcome back to Madrid. Okay, let's do a calm analysis of the match last night because, you know, in the heat of the moment, it's just kind of hard to gather your thoughts. Somehow, I don't know why I feel worse after yesterday's victory than I did after the defeat against Man City, but that's how I feel. This is the most frustrating, confusing Real Madrid side that I remember that I can remember. This is just not working. Okay, this is a team that cannot sustain intensity for more than 30 minutes. We've only managed to do it twice this year. When the intensity drops, all of the tactical weaknesses are on full display. This is a team that coughs up the ball at the slightest bit of pressure. This is a team that chases the ball endlessly, in recovery. This is a team that creates chances but can't finish. This is a team that has no identity, that plays every match like it's a new experiment. All of the weaknesses that I have been pointing out during the course of this season were on full display last night. And last night was no different than the other horrible matches that we've witnessed in La Liga. Let me give you my thoughts. This is totally unsustainable. I'm telling you, this needs to end immediately. This is completely unsustainable. We'll have to mention the refs as well, but let me give you my thoughts on sort of the lineup, the match, players, and the general situation, and some key takeaways. Thanks for joining me. Let's get started. Welcome back. Okay, let's go through the match last night, and I'm just very worried. This something has to change. This is completely unsustainable. Real Madrid cannot live in this limbo for much longer. Something has to be done. Okay, let's start with the lineup. Now, the lineup that Xavi came out with was fairly aggressive. It was the 4-3-3 that looked very similar to City, except in this case, instead of Gonzalo, you had Kylian as the number 9. But it was kind of trying to piggyback on the momentum from that match. And I think Rodrigo's inclusion was kind of trying to piggyback on a good match that he had against City. So this was a sort of aggressive 4-3-3, which you should be able to pull off against Alaves. Courtois in goal, Valdepeñas, the kid from Castilla, on the left, Rudiger and Asensio in the middle of defense, Fede as right back, Tchouaméni, Arda, and Jude in the middle of the pitch, and then up front you had Rodrigo, Kylian, and Vini. Now, in terms of the match itself, look, it was a slow start. Alaves, didn't come out firing with the kind of energy that I sort of expected. They were playing kind of a low to mid block. They weren't very dangerous. Real Madrid, managed to create chances even in the first 15 minutes of the match. In the 4th minute, Kylian with a shot that went near the post. Kylian was limping for a while. It looked like maybe he was injured, but it turned out to be okay. In the 7th minute, another shot by Kylian that went wide. I have to mention there were tons of interruptions in this match. The ref was just so annoying, calling every little touch foul, of course, against us. It was incredibly interrupted. In the 10th minute, Rodrigo had another very good chance, a shot that he sort of scuffed, went wide of the post. We were trying to press high, but, Alaves were just circumvented by going long, so there wasn't need to, we didn't have to poke that much in terms of our press. Now, I noticed in the first half, and I mentioned this in one of the briefs I did, Jude and Arda were playing side by side, way too close together. Jude and Arda are two players that need to play behind one another. So Arda, I think, needs to be further up as a 10. Jude, I think, needs to be further back as an 8. But they spent a lot of time, especially in the first half, playing side by side, occupying pretty much the same space. I thought that was just tactically very poor. Rodrigo, I noticed, wasn't always on the right, and there was a lot of switching between Vini, Kylian, and Rodrigo, but it wasn't synchronized. So sometimes they would all end up in the middle, and it looked to me like we were playing, they were all kind of bunched up in the middle. It looked like we were playing with like 2 or 3 number 9s. And then, and there was kind of, and the right wing tended to be empty because Rodrigo kept drifting into the middle. We were managing possession, pretty well. We were able to create more danger when they were playing a mid block. And so any ball recovery, we had a little bit more space. Whenever they settled into the low block, that's kind of when we struggle the most, but that's been the case forever. Vini had a very quiet first half. I think the first sort of 30 minutes, he was quite quiet. The goal came in the 23rd minute, and this was, a great goal. This was a recovery by Asensio. Ball gets to Jude. Beautiful pass by Jude, absolutely perfectly weighted to Kylian. And then Kylian, let's acknowledge this. It was a great goal and well done, but the Alaves defending was horrible. I mean, if you're going to let Kylian have that many touches on the ball, he uninterrupted, he's going to score. So this was a great goal, but I think very, very poor defending. Now, after the goal, we still pushed forward for about 6 or 7 minutes. The intensity level was maintained, and I thought, okay, this is good. One of the things in my preview that I mentioned was one of the things that we can't do is score a goal and then just let our guard down. Well, it lasted 6 or 7 minutes, and then the guard started to come down, okay? There was a lot of running, and I think the effort was there in the first 30 minutes, but after about the 30th minute, the wheels started to come off. Alaves started to take over possession. Their possession spells were longer and longer. By the way, we were constantly fouling. Half of them weren't even fouls. But, the first half ended with 2 amazing saves by Courtois in the last minute of the first half, which was sort of an indication of where things were going. The second half, I think, was kind of an extension of the last 50 minutes of the first half. Very, very poor play on our part. It was a little bit more back and forth. We did have a couple of chances. In the 52nd minute, there was a double chance. Kylian, who took a shot with very little angle, he should have cut inside. And then the ricochet went to Vini, who kind of, took a shot, but it was far too centered, very imprecise from him. Tchouaméni seemed to be the only player that was kind of trying to glue things together. I think he's become quite pivotal in that role. Arda was losing the ball a lot, something I really don't like to see. But like I say, the only times we looked like we created danger was when there was a little bit of space. Anytime we were facing a block, we couldn't get through. In the 58th minute, I made a note of a very sloppy pass by Jude to Kylian, which is kind of unforgivable. It was a great opportunity. And at this point, the Alaves counters started to look a little bit more dangerous. So at this point, you did get the feeling that Alaves' counters were looking a little bit more dangerous. There was a counter in the 60th minute where Rudiger got really pissed off and was yelling at Valdepeñas, the young kid, because there was a counter by Alaves and there was nobody on our left side, so their right side, there was nobody there. Okay, we were very sloppy up front, and we were really struggling to recover the ball. Vini was sort of very sloppy, nothing seemed to be working. Now the Alaves goal came in the 67th minute, and this was just, what can I say? You practice, these things are things that you work on in practice, like maintaining the offsides line. But in this case, Rudiger was a little bit too slow to catch up to the offside line, and he played the Alaves. It didn't look offside to me. I thought it was a fair goal, 1-1. But this is what I warned you guys about in the preview. You cannot score a goal and then just lose control of the match, and that's exactly what we did. After the goal, then we start scrambling. Then we get into this phase of the match that we've been watching all year, which is like this panic, oh my God, what are we going to do now? And we end up, like in every single match, we end up in this type of situation. In the 72nd minute, Alaves countered and almost scored. In the 75th minute, I just, wrote this down. There was a free kick and Rodrigo sent it to the 4th amphitheater. And this is a stadium that only has 1 or 2 amphitheaters. I mean, this ball, I don't know what the hell that was. But then a minute later, we get our second goal. And this was finally a good play by Vini. And we're going to talk about Vini because before, out of every 3 or 4 attempts, he would produce something amazing in one of them. Now it takes about 15 attempts for him to create danger, and the efficiency level of him on the left wing has really declined. But finally, in the 76th minute, Bini, a very good play on the left by him. He raises his head, good awareness to look to the middle, and a fantastic pass, and Rodrigo put it in the back of the net. Now in the 78th minute, Gonzalo and Huijsen came in, Arda and Valdepeñas came out. At this point, Fede was moved to the left back position. Now this tells you a lot about where we are, the state of the squad in terms of tactically and because of injuries and everything else. You have a midfielder who is stuck playing right back, who finishes a match playing left back. And that tells you a lot about Real Madrid's current state, and it also tells you a lot about Fede and what kind of a versatile player he is. In the 80th minute, Gonzalo had just a terrible mistake. It was a 2-on-1. Gonzalo had just come on the pitch. It was a 2v1. He could have carried the ball further and taken a shot, or he could have passed it easily, but he literally gave the ball right to the defender. It was the worst pass I've seen in a very long time. Very frustrating because we could have used another goal to settle things down. In the 83rd minute, Rodrigo came off, and Brahim came in. At this point, the Alaves counters were getting a bit scary. In the 86th minute, you had the penalty on Vini, which was the most obvious thing I've ever seen. I mean, it wasn't a lot of contact, but it was enough, because if you're running at full speed and somebody kicks you in the shin, it doesn't take a lot to sort of destabilize you. But there was plenty of contact there, more than enough to call a penalty. But what am I going to say? This Liga is just rotten. It's been rotten for years, and it's still rotten. Even the commentators on TV here, who are all paid by Rhodes, this Barça financier, even they were covering it. They're like, oh, I think Vini should get a yellow card for diving. The commentators were completely ignoring the fact that there was obvious contact, but, we're sick of this issue. In the 88th minute, Vini comes off because I think he was getting very heated, and he was very close to that second yellow. Mastantuono came in. I think that was kind of a good idea. The refs at this point added 6 minutes. Why? Because they wanted to give Alaves a little extra chance to score. Had it been the other way around, had Alaves been up 2-1, they would have added 2 minutes. This is something I would bet my left, kidney on. In the last few minutes, Alaves kept trying to push up, and we were sort of suffering in those final minutes. And it's just, you have to ask yourself, what the hell is Real Madrid doing, suffering and scrambling, playing for the final whistle against Alaves? And this is where we are, and it is absolutely pathetic, and it's completely unsustainable. The takeaways from this match are all simple and unfortunately negative. Number one, it is absolutely unbelievable that players of this quality can play so poorly. It is actually difficult to do. I don't know how we've managed to do it, but we have unbelievable players, and they play like crap. This is extraordinary. I don't know how this is possible. Number two, this team has no system. Every match feels different. Every match feels like a new experiment. Yesterday it was all about switching, the players up front, but of course totally unsynchronized, because if you're somebody, if the left winger goes into the middle, or the guy in the middle is supposed to go to the left wing, you're supposed to switch. You're not supposed to all stay in the same place. Anyway, every match is an experiment. This team has no style, no identity, and Xavi's been here too many months for this to be justifiable in any way, shape, or form. Number three, physically, this team cannot sustain intensity for more than 30 minutes. They've managed to do it 2 or 3 times this season, but that's it. In every other match, after 30 minutes, that's it. We run out of batteries, and we lose control of the match. Takeaway number 4, the City match, and this is something my uncle said in one of the little briefs I put up. The City match turned out to be an illusion. Not what the question was, is the City match does it indicate a direction, an improvement in play, and like that we're getting things together, or was it a one-off and a mirage and an illusion? And that's exactly what it was. The City match was the exception, not the rule. This was exactly like the crappy matches we played in La Liga prior to this one. It's just the same garbage. Takeaway number 5. Vini is now too irregular to be a starter at Real Madrid. I'm sorry, and I know this is controversial. You guys are going to kill me. But let's be honest about this. In the golden year that Vini had, where he was the best player in the world, in my view, it would take 2 or 3 plays for him to create a really destabilizing, dangerous play, right? To produce, something, sort of a really good shot, or an assist or a goal. It would take 2, 3, 4, runs on the wing for one of them to really produce something special. Now it takes about 15 to 20 attempts. The efficiency of Vini on the left has completely collapsed. Every attempt is a disaster. It took 75 minutes last night for one of his incursions to produce anything positive. This is not the kind of regularity that we demand at Real Madrid, and he's gonna. I would bench him from time to time to get him to straighten him out, because I think Vini's playing at a terrible level these days. Takeaway number 6. This team is far too dependent on Tchouaméni in the middle of the pitch. He saves our ass in every single counter. If it weren't for him, he's playing with incredible consistency. But if it weren't for Tchouaméni, Tchouaméni, and when he's not around, we really feel it. We become too dependent on Tchouaméni. That's takeaway number 6 for me. Number 7, Arda and Jude cannot, as I said, cannot play side by side. They need to play one behind the other. Yesterday, they spent too much time, like in the same part of the pitch, and that's just a recipe for disaster because it just doesn't work. And number 8. I would say takeaway number 8. This league is still completely corrupt. We all know this. It's still going on. It's unbelievable. These people get caught. They get prosecuted, but they continue to do it, and it's just unbelievable. But anyway, this is the league that is the most rotten league in Europe, and we have to live in it. Okay, takeaway number 9. I don't see how Xavi makes it past the holidays. I mean, you guys might have your own point of view. You can tell me what you think, and maybe, some of you think that he needs more time and all this kind of stuff. I'm just telling you that I just don't see any forward progress. And every single match, it's like we run into a wall, and just when we think we're turning a corner, we go back into the same pattern. I mean, I thought we were, after the Barça-Valencia match, I thought, this is it. We turned a corner, and it was disastrous after that. We play one good game against City where I think that the defeat was sort of not representative of what we saw on the pitch. And what happens the match after that? We go back into the dumps. This is not something that Real Madrid can tolerate. We are in limbo now, and it is not acceptable, and something has to change. And I don't think Xavi's going to make it very long. Okay, let me give you my thoughts on players very quickly. And of course, you guys tell me what you think, because this is always a little bit controversial. Okay, Courtois, I would give him maybe a 6 or a 7. He did have one spectacular save with his face. Now, believe it or not, that still counts as a good save, because if you're a goalkeeper, your job is to occupy as much space as possible, and where you put your face and your head is part of that. So I don't care where it hit. The fact is, it hit him, and it didn't go in the back of the net. So I think that was a very good save. Other than that, I don't think there was much he could have done with the goal. So I'd give him maybe, a 6 or a 7. Okay, Valdepeñas, I think all things considered, I would give him a 6. He did have one or two mistakes that were quite costly. But then again, all things considered, this is a young kid who's never played in Primera División before, and he has to play an away match. I think taking everything into account, I did think he did a reasonable job, and he should be quite proud of himself, because that's not an easy thing to do. So I'd give him something like a 6. Rudiger, I thought was like a 5. There were, he had the offside error in the goal, which was a bit upsetting, but he was also very sloppy in distribution. Some of his long passes were just really awful, and defensively, I don't know, he didn't feel as convincing as on other occasions. I think Rudiger is maybe a 5 or something. Okay, Asensio I thought was our most solid defender. I'd give him maybe a 7. I thought he was very physical, aggressive. He was quite fast. There were a couple of plays where he was key and recovered very well. I think Asensio actually showed a lot of composure and a lot of kind of grit. I think he did okay. I'd give him maybe a 7. Fede, I would say probably a 6. I think that defensively he was okay, and he had a couple of important carries to sort of get us out of trouble. But he wasn't quite as present as in other matches, and sort of didn't come up and help in the offensively as much as we would want to see. Okay, Tchouaméni I thought was like a 7 or an 8. There were a couple of ball losses that I did make a note of, but I think for the most part he was absolutely key. He's kind of the only thing kind of keeping our lines together. He's very well placed on the pitch. He tends to interrupt a lot of dangerous counters. I think Tchouaméni's really grown into this role. I thought he was one of our better players, if not the best last night. I'd give him maybe a 7 or an 8. Jude, I'd give maybe a 6 or a 7. I think, offensively, he was patchy. There were, he made a couple of really beautiful passes, but then a couple of really sloppy ones in great situations, which I think kind of affected us. I'd give him maybe a 6 or 7, but he did make a huge effort defensively. He seemed to run a lot. And when you watch it on TV, you can't see it as well as when you watch it live in terms of how much players run. But just from the camera angles, I mean, it did appear to me that he covered a lot of pitch defensively. So I'd say maybe a 6 or a 7. Okay, Arda, I'm going to give him a 4. I thought he had a poor match. He, how much he did lose a few balls, and that we have to attribute to him. I also think that maybe he was in the wrong play. He felt a bit lost on the pitch somehow. He just kind of seemed like he was struggling to get involved in play. Like he had to kind of come very close to the ball to pick it up. It didn't feel natural. He just felt a little bit lost positionally. That could have something to do with Xavi as well. But I thought he was very imprecise on the ball, and so I don't think he had a very good night. I'd give him like a 4. Okay, Vini. I'm going to give Bini a 5 only because at the end of the match he had those two key plays, the second goal and then the play of the penalty. So he eventually did make a difference. But, you know, prior to those two plays, I would have given him a 1 or a 2. Like, you know, up to that point, he was so frustrating. He loses so many balls. Like I say, it takes so many attempts for one of them to become fruitful. He used to be fruitful every 2, 3, 4 attempts. Now he's fruitful every 15 to 20 attempts, and that is just not good enough. So Vini, I think a 5, you know, that's all he gets. Okay, Kylian, I don't know, maybe a 6. I mean, he scored a goal, which was a really good goal. I think the defending was very lax in that play. I have to repeat that. But he did score a goal. He tried, and he always looks very good on the ball because he's so skillful. But I found him very isolated. He didn't connect very well with the other players. There wasn't a lot of combination play. So I'd give him, you know, even despite the goal, maybe just a 6. Okay, Rodrigo, I would say another 6. I think he started okay. But, you know, he had a couple of really bad misses that just kind of, you know, you expect more from players of this quality. One shot that was scuffed, and then the free kick that went, you know, I don't know, into orbit. So I don't know. He had a good first half. I think a reasonable first half, but then got worse as the game went on. I think I'd give Rodrigo a sort of a 6, kind of at best. Okay, I have to say a final word about the refs because this just pisses me off because it's just. We're just so tired of this. It's so tiring, and it's just every single week Barca gets a favor, and every single week we seem to get, you know, 3 or 4 red cards or penalties. Like there seems to, you know, every single week we run into the same problem. This was a clear penalty. You know, this is a ref that actually threatened Real Madrid prior to a cup final, I think 2 or 3 years ago. I mean, this is clearly somebody that has a contentious relationship with Real Madrid. I mean, he's literally threatened us in front of TV cameras in an interview. And, you know, do you think this is an objective ref? I mean, this whole scheme is still ongoing, and you can feel it in the press, in the coverage. You can feel it on the TV commentators. You can feel it in the mainstream media. It's just disgusting. But, you know, our eyes see what they see, and we're not stupid. And we can see this every week. And, you know, if Barca and all these people think they're getting away with it, they're not. They're not. The image of this league and the image of Barca as a club and a brand, I think, are suffering because of all of this. Because, again, we're not stupid. We see what we see. But anyway, look, something has to change. This is not good enough for Real Madrid. This is unacceptable. Something has to change, and it needs to change immediately. I think Xavi's going to go. I want him to go. We need to hit the reset button, and we need to hit it fast. All right, let me know what you guys think in the comment section. Thank you guys for joining me. Love you guys, and as always, Real Madrid.